Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton, here with Brandon. Been a bit of a quiet time around here in terms of Weiss news and updates over the past few weeks. It's been a while since the stream with all of the updates and the updated schedule, but we do have one thing that we really need to talk about. And it's actually on the JP side of things, Brandon. We have a brand new mechanic that is being dropped into the JP side of Weiss that's probably going to make its way over to English, so we need to talk about it. It's the link mechanic, the climax link mechanic that is going to be printed for the first time in JP on Grisaia 2. It's something completely unlike anything we've ever seen before, Brandon.
So we got these translations from Weiss Tea Time. That's Teo, who collects the translations from different spoilers that are coming out. Collected these translations from Grisaia Volume 2. And with that, part of that included this new link mechanic.
So, how this mechanic works. On the card, there is a link. That link is essentially a trait. And what that does is it basically allows these climax cards that may be in different zones, either on field or in your waiting room, to basically take each other's names and help to change your triggers, help to add additional triggers, help to get your climax that you need for your combo on board. Basically, they're able to influence each other from different zones to add more consistency to your board. For example, there are two cards in Grisaia that have some kind of synergy. On the card, it says a climax combo. It's not the traditional climax combo that we think of where you slam a climax down and something happens with the card. Not necessarily like that, but they have some kind of synergy with all of the climaxes that have this link. So, for example, we'll start with probably the one that grabbed the most headlines, which is this level 0 Kazuki. Pay 1 when this is reversed, and it can go to memory. Additionally, when you place a climax with this link, of which there are 6, by the way, in this Grisaia set, there's a bag, a bar, a pair of standbys, a door, and a pants, all of which have this link, which is called Seed of Blank Ale. I know nothing about Grisaia, so I'm assuming that has something to do with Grisaia. Anyway, whenever a climax with that link, whenever one of those 6 climaxes is placed on field, if you have 2 or more climaxes with different names in your waiting room, and that doesn't necessarily need to be climaxes that have the link or whatever, it's just 2 or more climaxes with different names in waiting room, and you have this Kazuki and another Kazuki, which we'll talk about in a second, in memory, then you can pay the cost, which is 1. So, to recap, when a climax with the link is placed on field, if there are 2 or more climaxes with different names in waiting room, and 2 specific Kazuki cards in memory, you may pay the cost, which is 1. And if you do, you can choose one of the following 6 card names, which are the names of the 6 climaxes that have the link. And during this turn, the climax in your climax area gains the same name as the chosen card name. Now, this is significant for a few reasons. 1, you don't need to have the climax in hand that you need for your combos at level 1 or level 3. You drop any climax that has the link, and you can give it the name of any other climax that has the link, even a card that's not in your deck. You just choose one of the card names. If you're running a level 1, for example, that combos with, say, the pants, you can slam the bar or the standby, and if you have 2 or more climaxes with different names in your waiting room, again, doesn't have to be the one that is on your combo, then you can give your climax card that you slammed an additional name, specifically the name of the pants. so you can combo with something that isn't the pants because you basically give it the name of the pants climax, as long as all the conditions are met. Now, these are pretty significant conditions, right? You need to have 2 specific cards of memory, and you need to have 2 or more different climaxes in your waiting room. But man, this has the potential to add a ton of consistency, not to mention a lot of climax options in deck building.
So essentially, how I read this is you can add in multiple climax combos happening at the same time during the turn. So, for example, like if we were to compare this to Data Live, and we had the Standby Kermie at the top, which having all those different effects going off, and then add in, say, the 3/2 Toka with the burn 5, you could have potentially the shuffle back 3 twice, and then burn for 5 on that last card.
Right now, that's predicated on 2 things. One, I don't know if a card can have more than one name at a time. The way the card is translated, it reads, during this turn, the climax in your climax area gains the same name as the chosen card name. So when you make the change, you pay the 1 with the climax cost, as it were, on play, then you can give this the same name as the chosen card name. I don't know if that replaces it, or if it's just an additional name slapped on top of the card. The card has 2 names now. I don't know. I'm sure we're going to find out very quickly. And, if someone knows the answer, by all means, tell us the answer, because I don't know. If it works that way, it's going to change the way that we play at level 3 forever. Specifically, however, it will require that the climax in question, the one that you play, has some kind of link with another climax. So obviously, you wouldn't be able to do this in Data Live because this mechanic does not exist in Data Live. Thank God. But that would require that the standby climax would need to have the link with the pants climax. And you would need to be able to slam the pants climax and give it the same name as the standby climax, or vice versa. So because that link doesn't exist, that whole mechanic doesn't exist, you can't do that with those cards from your example. And I mean, obviously, I know you know that. However, the fact that such a thing could be possible with future sets is honestly, on one hand, fascinating. On the other hand, kind of terrifying.
A precedent we have for cards having this multiple names kind of comes from the Excalibur Morgan climax from Fate, where we have the additional phrase that this card's name will also be regarded as Excalibur.
Honestly, I don't think... I think that that's definitely more of like an error on Bushiroad's part than anything else. So I don't think that that sets the precedent that we need in order to confidently say that this kind of effect can give a card a second name. You know what I mean? I don't feel confident saying that at all.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It was worth noting that there is a card that exists that has multiple names.
But yeah, there's a ton of potential in this. Either way, even if you can't do that, at the very least, you're basically, as long as you run climaxes that have the link, it's pay 1 climax swap anytime. Like, climax swappers will not need to be played anymore because all you need is a climax in hand, and you can swap it on play as long as you meet the condition. I'm assuming that this is going to be the primary use for this mechanic. Like, it's the use that makes the most intuitive sense, being able to replace a climax that you play with one that you need to make your combos go off. So it's going to add some consistency, which is honestly welcome, especially in a game that is more and more dependent on climax combos going off. Being able to guarantee your combo is going to go a long way towards stability and consistency. So that's just the one card that combos with the link climaxes. The second one is this other level 0 Kazuki. When it's reversed, if you don't have another copy of this in your memory, you can pay one, ditch one, send this to memory, and draw. So it is worth noting that in order to get these cards into your memory so that you can have the link, you need to pay one for each of them. So you'll need to pay at least two, in addition to potentially whatever cost is on the climax combo itself, in order to use the link. So what this does is, once this and the other Kazuki are both in your memory, when you reveal a climax off a trigger check, you can pay one, pitch one, so you can immediately pay out what you just triggered and pitch a card from your hand to take a climax with the link name from your waiting room and put it on top of your deck and trigger again. It basically lets you get a second trigger for the cost of pitching a card. So it can either fix your hand, or you can trade a card out of your hand for stock. Basically what you're doing is, the one that you pay for this isn't really a cost, because all it's doing is it's getting the first climax that you triggered out of your stock, and it allows you to trigger again for the cost of that card out of hand. So
is it going to be worth the initial cost early to get this package even going? Because you're looking at a minimum 2 stock cost early just to get these into memory, and then an additional 1 later when you're trying to use the effects.
Yeah. You can't really choose one or the other, right? Because you need both of them for both of the effects.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it's going to depend on just how broken they let the first Kazuki be. If you can have 2 different climax combos going off on the same combo, then it clearly would be worth it. Because it also is going to require you to play, probably at least 2 of each of these, if not 3. That takes up a lot of room at 0. They're decently sized, but they don't do anything other than die and go to memory. That's literally the only thing they really do. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with this. I also anticipate that this is, essentially the trial run. That they're going to make these effects better over time, because effects get better. There are some potentially really interesting uses here, but it does require a lot, both in terms of cost and deck space, in order to make it work.
But realistically, we're looking at this more for the potential of this coming into English, and looking at what is this potentially going to do with this effect eventually makes its way this way.
Right, and it almost definitely is. I'd be really surprised if we didn't see it in English at some point, which is really the reason we're talking about it, right? This is an English channel. We don't really talk about JP. So, the only reason we would be showing Grisaya cards on this channel is because we think that they have some kind of, significance when it comes to what the English meta is going to look like in the future. We're not going to get Grisaya. We've gotten no Grisaya. There's no reason to think we're going to get Grisaya. But there are a handful of sets that we're probably going to get, including a couple that have already been announced for English, that, they're on the short list for what could get this. And I guess it's time to look at that list. This is the list of every set that has been announced for English that we have seen 0 cards for. It is 2 sets long. Ruby, which is an English exclusive, announced for December, and HoloLive, which we are probably going to get around April of 2022. It's part of a group of sets, including Rent a Girlfriend and Mushoku Tensei, that are coming out after January. But HoloLive is the one that seems to be still the earliest in its production on the JP side of things. It's the only one that we haven't seen any cards for, so I think that it's reasonable to anticipate that coming last out of those 3. But in any case, Ruby is almost definitely not getting this. If only because I think Bushiroad would be loath to push out a new mechanic into an English exclusive at least 4 months before any other set would get it in English. That just doesn't strike me as something they'd want to do, nor does it strike me as something they'd want to do specifically with an English exclusive.
And realistically, I don't think they're going to want the headache of trying to introduce the new mechanic in an English exclusive set.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it would go very well at all. So realistically, I think that we're both in agreement that the first set in English that is likely to have this is going to be Hololive, probably around April-ish, depending on if there are more delays or if it gets pushed up ahead of something else in the schedule. We're looking probably sometime early mid-spring.
And part of it is because we think that there might be some thematic approach to that as well. Kind of going along with the idea of the link being more of like a collab link.
Yeah.
That maybe some of this interchanging with some of these climaxes or whatnot.
Yeah, I think there might be something there in terms of flavor with, different characters collaborating to do things together as they do. So those are the two sets that we know are coming to English that are at least like kind of on the watch list for this effect. Aside from that, moving to kind of the next group, stuff that is already announced in JP and has at least a decent chance of making its way over into English. That list is really also only 2 sets long. It's Quintuplets 2 and Fate Grand Order Camelot. Quints 2 is a definitely maybe for English, but the way that they treated Quintuplets coming into English the first time, both with the delay and the quintessential set and the very weird rarities that it has, like, I don't know if we're going to get Quintuplets 2. I don't know how it's going to sell. We'll find out at some point. But Quintuplets 2 is coming out in JP. We've seen a couple of spoilers, but not very many. So it stands to reason that there might be some of this mechanic in there, but we'll see long term. Camelot, I would be very surprised if we didn't get this in English. It just makes sense. Grand Order, still pretty popular. Camelot in particular going to be popular because there are definitely characters there that people are going to want to play and collect. I'd be really surprised if we didn't get this. So that's definitely on the short list for stuff that will likely have this mechanic as well. So the other 2 on this list are sets that have been announced in JP and have no current spoilers. So we haven't seen any of the cards. And theoretically could make their way over to English, although I think you and I are both in agreement that we don't expect either of these. World Trigger definitely more likely than D-Side, but neither of them were particularly popular in the West. D-Side definitely not. I honestly had never heard of it until the Weiss announcement. World Trigger definitely more likely than D-Side, but I would say less likely than set 2 of Quintuplets or Grand Order Camelot. So everything else that's been announced in JP has enough spoilers for us to think that we're not going to see this mechanic there at all. So like Mushoku Tensei, for example, or Rent a Girlfriend, both of which the full sets are out in JP, and or at least like we've seen all the cards in JP, and this mechanic's already be found, so doubtful that they would, add that on its way over. So yeah, like that's the short list of stuff that could have this in English by even next summer. Although I would expect that we will have something that has it by next summer. Long term, however, and this is where we get to kind of talk about some more far off speculative stuff just in general, there are a lot of sets in English that could very easily get an additional set based on source material, including some recent announcements, right? Like we've got SAO Progressive, which is supposed to be getting an anime and could easily become a Weiss set. There's more material in the 2nd season of Slime to make a 3rd Slime set. Kaguya got a 2nd season announcement. Bofuri got a 2nd season announcement. Madoka got a 4th movie announcement. That will be coming out relatively soon. Konosuba is getting a 3rd season, which is a pleasant surprise for those of us who have been holding out hope that Konosuba isn't going to be completely out of the meta. Now we're talking about a Konosuba set that could potentially come into the meta with this brand new mechanic to boot. So Konosuba suddenly just got a whole lot more interesting in English because it could potentially have a release as early as the end of 2022, maybe 2023. And then, of course, there's also the possibility of more ReZero stuff. It got announced in Rebirth for you, but as we saw with HoloLive, that doesn't necessarily exclude it from coming to Weiss as well. All of these are potential future releases. We're talking, late 2022, early 2023 probably, but they all are in the window of time where they could get this link mechanic, which could potentially make them a whole lot more relevant. What do you think?
I think it'd be really interesting, especially if we're looking at additional support for sets that already exist. I think that the link mechanic stuff is going to be very contained to the newer releases and not necessarily tie in as much with the older stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because just it's giving climaxes traits outside of being on the card itself, like what we see in Grisaya, might be a little bit more difficult.
Sure.
However, I think that having this link mechanic in place definitely allows for a lot more flexibility in deck building and potentially a way to look at cards that already exist in new ways.
And realistically, having characters that have synergy with the link or have themselves the link is another thing that could be done. So I think there's a lot of unexplored territory with this, and I honestly wouldn't take anything off the table just yet. This is Bushy Road. This might be something where they've decided to go big, and if they do, it could change the way that we play Weiss forever.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that the traits do not necessarily have to be on climaxes. It could potentially even be tied in with events. So, I think that there's a lot more deck building opportunities out there with this new mechanic. And I think that could also help just change how we look at deck building as a whole.
We have come a long way from trial deck apple bonders, my friends. We have come a long way. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. We'll see. Bushy Road's going to have to announce some cards for the new HoloLive set before too long. And we'll see if we're actually going to get the link mechanic in English as early as next spring. In the meantime, of course, we have a lot more stuff going on over here. We'll have another episode of 5 Cards, 5 Minutes. We'll start talking about Fate on Thursday. And then next week, the Holy Grail War. It begins next Tuesday with kind of a preview show. We're going to talk about what it looks like, the decks, the characters, all the interesting stuff from Heaven's Feel Volume 2, and all of the other Fate sets that we're going to be playing over the course of the following 9 days. There will be a game every day, starting Wednesday, August 11th until August 19th, leading up to the August 20th release of Fate Stay Night, Heaven's Feel Volume 2 in English. We're very excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun, as Fate probably gets its final English main series release. So, lots coming up over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully you will join us for all of it. Until next time, thank you for joining us today. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.